measures during the Second World War. You don't win wars by wearing kid gloves, but how brutal? Well, Sophie Jackson has written a book about the successes and failures, as she puts it, of the interrogation techniques used by the British. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And you say that they used more subtle psychological techniques. I noticed one of them that you rather liked the sound of was the haunted cell. What's that all about?
Yes, that's probably my favourite technique. That occurred at Camp 020, which was mainly for interrogating German spies that had been captured. And this particular cell had once been a padded cell, but it had been changed to make it look like all the other cells in the building. But they used to tell people that it was haunted, and that people who went in the cell generally turned out crazy afterwards. And surprisingly, most of the spies that were told this was a last resort, and most of them actually broke either before
Really? They believed that?
They believed it, genuinely believed it, and they either before they were put in or after one night in that cell. It was probably helped by the fact that above the cell there was the officers' mess. And on certain nights they'd hear all these footsteps going around all over the floor, and they didn't realise there was an officer's mess, so they thought there was ghosts stomping around.
It just sounds too simple to be true, really, doesn't it?
It does, really. The idea that just telling someone there's a ghost in there, and that if you go in there, they used to tell people, some people, we found them dead the next morning, no reason why, and they believed it, and, but there again, I suppose, in an element like that, you're in a foreign country, you've been caught for spying, maybe your mind's working in a different way.
Well, I suppose that's possible, or maybe the people you've been talking to have slightly conned you into believing that they didn't practice any torture. Because, there must have been some torture, mustn't there? It's inconceivable that they wouldn't have responded in some cases like that.
That is true. In camps like Camp 020, which was run by Lieutenant Colonel Stevens, torture was completely banned. It was actually officially banned. But in camps such as the London Cage, which has become notorious and is now actually the Russian embassy, but that's where the London Cage was, and there are stories that torture was used there, and while there's no hard evidence, it seems very likely that at least some form of torture, possibly like forcing people to do excessive exercise, running around in circles, or standing in rooms that were excessively hot or cold, things like that, and certainly humiliation techniques were used upon prisoners brought there, especially war criminals after the war had ended, to break them. But it was hushed up, and organisations such as the Red Cross weren't allowed in to see what was happening, because they knew the backlash that would come once they found out.
Indeed. Sophie Jackson, thanks very much indeed.